That's not good enough for most recruiters. They want to know, what did you actually do? What did you actually do to find out the issues? I mean, it's great that you come in with results, but you got to talk a little bit about your methodology. So the first thing I want to know from you is, okay, so first of all, again, at first sight, a clean presentation of things. There's a lot of content here, which is good. I do like at the very end that there's reflections. I'm always looking when students hand in portfolios, I always remind them, hey, I want a reflection bit. Actually, most of the exercises in my UX courses, they have to write reflections. It's part of the job. It's usually also the end of their presentation is a quick reflection on the project. I do want to see what impact it had on them. So that's a big positive for me. One of the things that's a clear negative right away is when the overview is just on the app. I mean, this is a portfolio piece. So the first thing I want to know from you is, what did you do? And I still am not 100% sure what all he did. Like, I don't like it when folks just list their roles. And then in this case, we've got like all these roles. So we got team lead, data analyst, UX design, UI design, and then we got processes and tools, and they're not really connected. Like, what tools were you using in what role, and like how much did you like? And as you all know, like just putting a role even in your CV, that's not good enough for most recruiters. Like, they want to know, what did you actually do? Not, okay, UX design, UI design can be 10,000 things. So what part of that did you actually do? Did you build the prototypes in Figma? And of course, as we scroll through this, we see this later, and that's kind of nice. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, but that very first, so under the role duration process tools table, that very first MacBook screenshot, it actually scrolls inside the MacBook. Yep. So when your cursor is over the MacBook, I thought
when
that was
scroll, it just catches it. Yep.
Yeah, just if you hold the cursor in front, it actually scrolls inside of that iframe or whatever it is. That was that was kind of cool. I like that.
Oh, and actually, I didn't realize this until now. It actually is a carousel. Yeah. If you click on the right arrow, it'll show you different parts. I didn't realize that. I didn't even know.
Yeah. And they're all scrollable through the MacBook. Yeah. So that's kind of a neat little thing. I like that. So for me, as a UX research guy, the description of user testing UX research was just insufficient. You gotta talk a little bit about methodology, specifically when he goes into user testing. He pretty much just like, okay, these were the issues. So like, what did you actually do to find out the issues? I mean, it's great that he come in with results, but you gotta talk a little bit about your methodology. It's different types of user tests that you can run, different types of study designs here. Like, did you just do an observation? Did you do any interviews? Like, sure, you asked some questions, you say before that, but like, it's just not clear how that was designed. And I'm a sort of methods person, so I'd like to see a methodological breakdown when you talk about the UX research bits. So that was insufficient for me. I did like the key takeaway. I do think there's a little, like, I've been just trying to look at the page. There's something going on with the fonts here. Like, there's, I think, 10 different font sizes that are being used. And it's just like minor differences, like half a point or something like that. Or there's different spacing between the characters. But there's something strange. Like, the fonts are definitely not unique. It looks a little bit like a ransom letter at times. It's just too many different font sizes here.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That might have just been a setting somewhere that can be turned off in Webflow, but that really kind of took me off guard. And one of the tips that I always give my students when it is like that, so I really like people emphasizing key points, but to me, bold fonts are overused. And if you do it in a lot of running text, I always recommend to use the mark tag, because with the mark HTML tag, you usually get a nice highlight, and you can CSS style that, of course. And I usually say, like, just make it look like a marker, just make it look like a highlight. It looks so much nicer than to just bold font it, because there's just too many bold fonts here. We've got the bold fonts in the titles, and then all these little bold fonts in there. I think there's a lot that could have been done with just a mark tag and a nice CSS that makes that just a little bit of a subtle highlight instead of such a big highlight. But I'll stop there for now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the bold fonts it's a good move, though, from a hierarchy standpoint. It's true that, if it's too overdone, then it doesn't make any sense, especially, like just one word like this in instrumental. It's like, well, what can I take away? If I were to just scan very quickly and read just the bolded points, am I able to follow the story or not? Right now, it would just be instrumental, user needs, colors incredible. Sure, okay, okay, great. but right, it's not really critical. But there are places where he does it where it's much better. Like, you know, let's see, visualize the screen layout, play around different concepts. You know, at a glance, can we understand what happened if we don't read anything that is not bolded, right? That's kind
if
of
you go
the
up to user
key here
testing. You go up to user testing, that one's pretty good. Like his bold on user testing right there. It's actually saying
yes,
like
exactly.
That actually makes sense. If you read that, you're like,
Yes.
oh, that's actually. But what's confusing about that is he doesn't tell you how many people he tested with, and so it's like more than half of what? Did you talk to 4 people? Like,
yeah,
hard to know. Anyway, back to you, man.
Yeah, no, that's anyway. So another thing that I had in mind is like there is this top nav that then changes, which I think is cool. It's kind of a sticky thing right here, but if I'm all the way like down there and I want to go back home real quick, I can't. Like there is no way for me to do that. I have to scroll potentially a lot and then finally go back here and then it's finally interactable, right? It's not the same nav, obviously, but I think that it could, through some sort of interaction, add some sort of back button or home button here or somewhere. Maybe sticky at the bottom, something, right? Where can I go back to the original locations quickly? Right now, the answer is no. And that's a big problem from a navigation standpoint. And then, I think what you mentioned, Lennart, is it's kind of weird. Like sometimes these fonts are a bit bigger, but not by much. The bolding is kind of inconsistent. But overall, I mean, I feel like I'm able to get a grasp on the story. And there is maybe a little bit too much text. One piece of feedback that I have in terms of for your text, Trevor, is these sections here, they're way too wide. It's like watching a tennis game. I know it's Roland Garros these days, the French Open, which I absolutely love. And I feel just like that right now when I have to go from left to right. It's just so much work. So if you can make it so that they're only like 65 to 70 characters per line, that makes the legibility so much better. But sometimes you do it just right? So like, I think maybe that might be the max. It's actually still a bit too wide. So I would watch out for your layout and for your text length, paragraph length, bolding, making sure that it's always useful and not just one word like here. But overall, I feel like I'm getting a grasp on the story. I'm seeing that there was actual developer handoff. It feels like this project went through. It didn't feel like a student project. So that was good.
For sure. You know, to add to, I agree with both of you. I think this is awesome. I think for me, there's just a bunch of small things that add up over time that made it feel off. So for example, right there where you're at your Deb had handoff, like the layout there is super odd. Like you have these really wide layouts and you have these really thin layouts, and like the text is all over the place in a lot of places, and it's really confusing as far as like what's going on. And so like if you scroll down from there or up, it doesn't matter. You're going to find sections where, I guess it'll be up from there because the images, like where, like that right here, challenge and solution. You have this massive image on the right that doesn't even fit in the screen.
Oh, here? This one?
That's fine. Wireframe, like it's much bigger, but
right
like these
there.
massive pictures that like are related to one thing of text, and it just feels really, really odd to me. It doesn't fit. But just overall, which kind of leads to the feedback of overall layout. The overall layout of this thing feels really inconsistent. Because like at first, when you're at the top, it's like it feels really good. Like to your point, Lennart, like the hero section looks good. Like the blue looks good, even though it's not accessible, which we already knew. It looks good though. Like it feels pretty good. You feel like you're going to get something pretty good. And the overview section, I think, is okay. It's a little bit wordy, and the second paragraph of the top section of the overview is not necessary. But like, and then, as you continue to scroll down, like, okay, I feel pretty good about like the final prototype he put up there. It looks solid. Like the final design of this looks good. But then
this
once
one
you
right
get
here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Any and all of that. Like,
This
it looks good.
This is good.
Yeah, it looks really good. So like all of that for the most part is pretty good. The only critique I'd say, other than what I've said so far, is like the role duration process tools in the overview section. Like the random indentation is like, why did you do that for like team lead, data analysis, duration? It's like a random indentation. It should be left aligned. So with that left aligned piece of feedback, everything he's done so far, with the exception of overview, is left aligned. And so like, to me, the headers should all be left aligned. Like overview should be left aligned, and because everything has this consistent left aligned feeling. And so if you continue downwards, you get to research, that should be left aligned, in my opinion. And then, I think can create a consistent boundary of your content with exceptions, like the kickoff call competitive analysis, that could be a full width thing. But like if you're just going to have text, it should have a consistent boundary down the page. So then like that image is just way too big, like for that section. And then you have the client questions, like text all over the place. And it kind of it's all of those things that add up to make this feel not great to me. I get a sense of the story going on, but for me, it's hard to know, to your point, Lennart, what he actually did and what was his contribution. Like, was the final visual design his? Like, there were 4 designers. Like, who did that? Who did that portion? Like, what can I expect from you if I were to hire you? Like, what could you do for me? And then the last thing I'll say before I'll hand it off to one of you is at the sketches section, that was a red flag to me because he said that he did sketches, but they're wireframes. Those are not sketches. Yeah. So I was like, what are you talking about, sketches? So,
digital sketches.
Yeah, digital sketch. Like, sure, but like it looks way too polished to be a sketch. And like, I know people who use their iPads to do sketches, and it doesn't, even though like there's some perfect lines in there, it's clearly a sketch. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for me. Would you guys like to finish it off?
Yeah, Lennart, feel free.
One of the things I just wanted to add, because we did when we scrolled into mobile,
yes.
I think it kind of relates to what Colton already said. This idea, like for me, it's when I teach the CRAB principles, from Robin Patricia Williams, the contrast of repetition, alignment, and proximity. That's really what gets completely out of whack, right? Like proximity is off on the sides, right? Like things are too close. The contrast is off when it comes to resizing, restructuring. Alignment is off. That's what Colton earlier said. Like, we just need clear lines, clear structures. And yes, left align is much easier to read, so that would be the default I would go with. Repetition, proximity, like all of these things are off. The biggest thing I think here is the images being trapped in tables somehow. Like, you always want to, if you have a fluid layout, you always want to make sure that if you have a table, it shifts over, right? So the row on the right side kind of goes on the top side, and then the image scales instead of you just shrinking the table, which is what's currently happening.
Most images are gone at this point. Look at it. There's no more. Yeah, if you're on mobile, you can see the work.
Lennart, what would you give this for a rating?
This is somewhere between meh and good for me. Definitely good in terms of content, but there are just too many issues with layout. I think it's just the detail is massive, and once you have that much content, you really have to think about, how do I present the content on the page that I'm still telling a story. And I think while Ludovic definitely said the story is still there, I think we get lost too often during the story. So it's just too disjointed for me to stay with good. So I'd probably be more on the mess side here. I think there's a lot that can be improved just to tell the story in a coherent way. And sometimes it's all about copywriting too. Like, do you even need all this text to tell the story, right? Like, sometimes just show that image, have one punchy line, and move on to the next bit, right? Like, it's maybe too much detail at some pieces here.
Right.
Totally.
I couldn't say it any better. I have to say, I would say the exact same words if I could. So I will say also a meh. I think that the layout really kills it. It kills the story. There is some storytelling. It's there. We can tell. We can tell that he did the work. We don't know exactly what part of the work. So like, the story is kind of incomplete in parts, but yet it's there. It's not like it's completely absent or it feels artificial. It feels like it was a real project. Yet, like we said, like, too much disconnect between things. The layout takes me out of the story. It's not responsive, so I'm like, well, does he know his mobile or responsive layouts? Like, like I have a lot of questions in my mind right now. If the layout was good, I think that we could quickly jump to a good or a good plus, but it takes too much away from it.
Yeah. When we talked to Michael Rittering, aka Rid, he put it really, really well. And it's something that I've always thought about, but he described it really well, which is like, your portfolio should be providing a clear statement of what you offer. And it should be answering questions. Like, if you walk away with more questions than answers, then that's a serious problem. And so I think you both are actually being remarkably nice. Or I'm being extra harsh. I would provide this a 1 star and needs an overhaul, but I don't think it would take that much to fix. to get up to good, solid Kickass. I think there's a lot, like you guys already touched on a lot. Layout would be a big part of this. Text / fonts need to be fixed. But for me, the reason it's a 1 is because I am unsure what he did for this versus other people.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah.
I have no idea what he did. And so I'm walking away with like way more questions about what he actually did versus others. And then that plus the other issues, like that is why I would say it's a 1 star. Like there's a lot more that, again, I don't think it'd take that much to fix, but until he fixes that stuff like that, those are some serious issues for me.